I'm Elizabeth at Literary Princess, and today I'm doing my June wrap-up. I read 13 books in June, which is not quite as good as April was, but it is definitely better than May, and I am pretty pleased with myself. A lot of this is because I decided to reread a certain series, which if you've watched my currently reading videos, you might know already, but we'll talk about that, and it's getting its own video as well soon. But let's jump into these 13 books. First up is a library book that's a hardcover and has its like an actual cover, which is pretty cool. This is Godiva's Ride, Women of Letters in England, 1830 to 1880, by Dorothy Merman, I think. Yes, Merman. Unfortunately, this book was not good. I gave this 2 stars. I was reading this for my dissertation, obviously. And while it had some good information in it, it also had some strangely incorrect information in it. So it spent a lot of time talking about Charlotte Bronte, which is completely understandable. And yet it proceeded to get just like so many things wrong about both her life and her novels. Merman said that Mr. Rochester's first wife was Blanche Ingram. Ma'am? Excuse, what? 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 But, like, I don't feel like I even need to say more. What the hell? Ma'am, you couldn't even be bothered to reread Jane Eyre and make note of proper names? Screw you! So yeah, I was not pleased with this. I was reading it on a plane while I was with a friend who is also a 19th century literature person. And I was like, look at this! And showed it to her. She was like, what the F? I'm like, yeah, right? Like, ma'am! I'm still not over it. It's been over a month since I read this book. I'm still not over it. Anyway, it was terrible. I hated it. 2 stars. Next up was actually my Fairy Tale Friday read for May, but I didn't finish it until June. This is A Wild Winter Swan by Gregory Maguire. I gave this 3.5 stars. It's beautifully written. I did enjoy it, but I wanted more fairy tale retelling from it, I guess. I have a whole video on this that you can watch if you want to hear more of my thoughts. It does contain spoilers though. But yeah, it's good, but it's not as good as Maguire's other books. All right, and now we get to the real reason that I read as much as I did this month. I decided to reread the Twilight saga. Now, I'm gonna have a whole video on rereading the Twilight saga as an adult, so I'm not gonna say a whole lot about any of these here because I would not want to ruin that wonderfulness for you. It hasn't been filmed yet because I'm trying to locate a necklace that I had while I was in high school that was bought at Hot Topic and was Twilight themed, and I just think it would be funny to wear it during the video. So that's why this isn't out yet. Anyway, Twilight, I struggled whether to give this 3 or 4 stars. I know that the last time I reread it as an adult, which was honestly not that long ago, Twilight's kind of a comfort read for me, weirdly enough. But I know I gave it 4 stars. I could not in good conscience give this 4 stars this time. I gave it 3. I had a lot of fun with this, okay? Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But for reasons, I gave it 3 stars. And you can hear all about those reasons in my rereading the Twilight saga as an adult video, coming soon to YouTube near you. Another little project I've had this month has been trying to make myself a poetry person. So I read Ariel by Sylvia Plath. So I have read a few Sylvia Plath poems before, mainly Daddy and Lady Lazarus, which, you know, are the 2 that always get taught in school. So I figured I'd pick up Ariel and see the rest of the poems. I gave this 3 stars. I did like a few of the poems. I didn't really care about some of the other ones. I'm trying to remember which ones I actually liked though. And I'm like looking at this, I'm like, I don't really remember. I know that I have kind of complicated feelings about Daddy and Lady Lazarus. I really like the way that they sound, like the way as poems they're structured and the way they sound. But I'm kind of uncomfortable with the fact that she's using these Holocaust metaphors when she's not Jewish. It's just kind of weird. So I'm like, So I like Plath, but I gave this 3 stars. There were a bunch of poems about bees, and I was like, I just don't care. Oh my God, bees, I don't care. Anyway, next up was another dissertation read. This is Outside the Pale, Cultural Exclusion, Gender Difference, and the Victorian Woman Writer by LCB Mishi. This was really good. I gave this 3 stars. I guess I remember it as being better than I thought it was. What? What was this one? I don't remember it very well, clearly. Oh, okay, now I do. All right, so this had some really great discussion of Elizabeth Gaskell's work. And I'm thinking, even though Gaskell is not one of the writers I'm looking at in my dissertation, I'm thinking of kind of doing the conclusion on her, because she is one of these women writers who wrote quite a lot and was writing for money, but managed to make it into the literary canon. So I do want to talk about her in my conclusion, but she's not one of my main authors. What I didn't like about this and why I gave it 3 stars is I was not on board with her reading of the works of Charlotte and Emily Bronte. I just didn't buy it. So yeah, 3 stars for this. Next up, New Moon by Stephanie Meyer, book 2 in the Twilight saga. I gave this 3 stars as well. And again, I was between 3 and 3.5 with this one. And I decided to go with 3 for all of them, except a certain one that we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, I had fun. I had fun. I don't want to say a whole lot because I want to talk about it in my Twilight video. But yes, I had fun. Next up, another dissertation read. This is Salem Chapel by Margaret Oliphant. This was a lot of fun. It follows a guy whose name I don't remember, Arthur Vincent, who is a dissenting minister and has just come to Carlingford to be the minister of Salem Chapel. And he's not really getting what he was bargaining for, and then some really crazy sensational stuff happens. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite of Oliphant's works. It's probably my least favorite, but I still really enjoyed it. And honestly, it's probably my least favorite because the majority of the time was spent with a male character, and I just find her female characters way more interesting than her male characters. But I'm using this for my dissertation, and I had a lot of fun. Next up is A Poetry Handbook, a prose guide to understanding and writing poetry by Mary Oliver. I got this as part of my Become a Poetry Person project, and I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. It's very short, very sweet, and very easy to understand guide to poetry, which I appreciated. I found that it helped me a lot thinking about the poems that I was reading, but also thinking about poems that I'm writing. So I found this very useful. Eclipse. I also gave this 3 stars. I had fun with it. Again, I feel like that's the running theme of this month. I had fun with it. We're starting to get into more of the bigger issues I have with this series, starting in this book. I mean, they're there in Twilight and New Moon as well, but it's like it goes downhill. But I still gave it 3 stars. I still had fun. Next up is more poetry. This is the Death Notebooks by Anne Sexton. I gave this 3 stars as well. I had some poems in here that I really enjoyed, and then some that I just really didn't like. So I feel like poetry is so often kind of a mixed bag for me, but oh well. All right, here it is. Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer, the final book in the Twilight saga. I gave this 1.5 stars. I have so many issues with this book, first and foremost being its existence. But I'm not going to talk about that here because you're going to have to wait for my whole video about it. But yeah, the The half star is because there are things in here that could have been great. It could have been great. There's some just really interesting stuff about the world that the Twilight saga takes place in, and like other characters, but the main plot of this story is so bad. Anyway, you have to wait for the whole video. Also, it's stupidly long. Why is this so long? It could have been half of this length. Next up was my June Fairy Tale Friday read. This was Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. This is magical realism with a dual timeline in present day and 1550 something. 1518 in Strasbourg. So this weaves together the fairy tale of The Red Shoes by Hans Christian Andersen and the real life dancing fever that happened in Strasbourg. And I loved what McLemore did here. I loved what they did in Blanca and Roja, their retelling of Snow White and Rose Red as well. So I knew I'd like this quite a bit. The reason that I've given it 4 stars and not 5 stars is because we have 3 altering points of view here. In the present, we have Rosella and Emile. And then we have in Strasbourg, Lala. And Emile and Lala's points of view are 3rd person limited, but Rosella's are 1st person. And I find the switch between 1st person and 3rd person very jarring. I don't like it when Charles Dickens did it in Bleak House. I don't really love it here either. And also the chapters are very short. So I would be like just finally getting into Rosella's story, and then we'd be switching back to Lala's story. And then I was really into Lala's story the whole time, and every time I had to switch back out of Lala's story, I was kind of pissed off, I'm not gonna lie. So that's why 4 stars, not 5, but the writing is gorgeous. It's just so good. Oh, I love what McLemore did here. It's really great. And we are ending on another reread. This is How to Suppress Women's Writing by Joanna Russ. I read this last year for my exams. I wanted to reread it because it is a very important text for my dissertation. As with last year, I gave this 4.5 stars. The only thing keeping it from being 5 stars is the fact that Joanna Russ calls Ouida, who is a Victorian novelist that I'm working with, who I love, she calls her a bad novelist, and I am like, no, I will not stand for that sort of slander here. Get out of my house. But other than that, this is a fantastic book breaking down the various ways that women's writing has been suppressed over the years. Super helpful and really great. So that is what I read in June. Let me know down in the comments below, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What did you read in the month of June? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.